"She's not going to make it," shouted Malik, gripping his binoculars tighter as his boots slammed through the dry underbrush. The radio on his belt crackled, but he wasn't listening anymore. He could see her now, barely 200 feet ahead, staggering, bleeding, alone. Asha, the youngest elephant calf in her herd, was limping across the open plain of Lorien Hills, a slash of crimson painting her gray side. The wound on her leg had grown worse overnight. It was a wire trap injury, deep, festering, and nearly fatal. The rest of the herd had moved on, unaware she hadn't been following. Left behind, vulnerable. Her cries grew softer by the minute, but Malik wasn't the only one watching. To the south, where the golden grass thickened into low brush, a pride of lions had caught her scent, long before the rangers had. 4 lionesses, lean, silent, eyes locked on the limping calf. Their paws tread without sound, but their intent hung in the air like a thundercloud. They didn't rush. They didn't have to. Asha was already collapsing. She stumbled once, tried to push forward. Then again, her leg folded beneath her and she hit the ground hard. Her trunk raised feebly, flailing in the dust. A small cry escaped her, barely a whisper but loud enough to draw the lions closer. Malik picked up his pace, calling through the radio. "Base, we need backup now. Coordinates 7172x36890. Calf down." Lions approaching. But someone else was already moving. Long before Malik reached the scene. Someone wild. Someone unexpected. A young giraffe named Tamu. He stood on the ridge just beyond the thicket, ears twitching, legs tense like wires. He wasn't supposed to be here. At barely a year old, Tamu had been separated from his mother during the last migration. He'd survived on instinct, drinking from shallow streams and watching the world from the trees. He had never intervened, never needed to. Until now. The moment Asha collapsed, something changed in him. His entire body locked onto the scene. The bleeding calf, the slow circling predators. His heart pounded, his hooves shifted. Then, without warning, Tamu ran. He charged straight into the clearing, his long legs thundering over the ground with terrifying speed. The lions froze. Giraffes never did this. They fled, they never fought. But Tamu didn't slow down. The lead lioness lunged forward, testing him. Tamu responded with fury. A kick, an explosive spinning strike that caught the lioness across the shoulder with the full force of his hind legs. She tumbled away in a spray of dust, snarling in pain. The others backed off, circling wider now, confused. Tamu didn't retreat. He planted himself in front of Asha, towering and still, head high, eyes locked on the circling predators. His chest rose and fell in heaving breaths. He didn't blink. Asha, trembling on the ground, blinked. Up at him in a daze. She didn't know what this strange creature was doing, why he was here, why he had chosen to stay. But she watched him, and something in her calmed, just slightly. The lions regrouped, crouched low in the grass, tails twitching with irritation. But they didn't pounce, not yet. They watched, measured, waiting to see if the stranger with the long legs had more fight left in him. And from the ridge, Malik saw it all unfold, his heart hammering, stunned into silence by what he was witnessing. Not just survival, not just instinct, but something else, something that would change everything. The wind picked up, scattering, thin clouds of dust across the savannah floor as tension thickened between predator, prey, and the unlikeliest guardian. Tamu stood tall over Asha's wounded body, his legs like pillars rooted to the earth. The lionesses, though cautious now, were not deterred. Their hunger gnawed at them as fiercely as the heat, and this unexpected interruption only delayed the inevitable, or so they believed. Malik had paused at the top of the rise, eyes wide, chest heaving from the sprint. What he saw below defied everything he thought he understood about the wild. A lone giraffe defending an injured calf from an entire pride. That didn't happen. Not here. Not anywhere. But Tamu wasn't leaving, and the lions weren't backing down. The lead lioness, the one Tamu had kicked, rose from the dust and growled low. Her shoulder hunched, her golden eyes narrowed in fury. Blood stained her, fur where the hoof had connected. She wasn't going to forget the pain or forgive it. She crept to the side, attempting to flank the giraffe while the others moved opposite her, forming a slow, deliberate crescent around their targets. Tamu's ears flicked, his head tilted sharply. He saw them, all of them. He didn't run. Instead, he stepped in a wide arc, positioning himself directly between Asha and the advancing lioness. Then, in a moment that startled even Malik watching from above, Tamu reared up just slightly and stomped down hard. A warning, a declaration. Asha let out a soft sound behind him, a wheeze of pain and fear. Her strength was fading fast. Her wound wasn't just surface level. She was likely losing more blood than Malik had first thought. She couldn't walk, couldn't stand. Without intervention, she wouldn't last another hour. And yet here she was, shielded by a creature she had never met. A creature that owed her nothing, giving her time she didn't even know she needed. The lionesses didn't attack. Not yet. But the tension was razor thin. One sudden movement could tip the balance. Malik slowly raised his radio to his mouth again, whispering as if afraid even the sound might disrupt the standoff. Rescue team, be advised. One calf down, surrounded by 4 lions. Lone giraffe in defensive position. I repeat, a giraffe is holding off lions. I need tranquilizers and medevac now. The voice on the other end stuttered in disbelief, but confirmed they were 5 minutes out. Tamu shifted again, hooves planted. One of the lionesses lunged forward in a feint, testing his reaction. He snapped his hind legs up with a crack that echoed across the clearing, missing her by inches. She hissed and retreated a few steps, eyes flashing. They were wary now, unsure of how far this giraffe was willing to go. He had already broken their rhythm, their confidence. He was turning instinct into hesitation. Then behind the lions, a low hum pierced the air. Engines. Malik's heart leapt. The jeep came into view moments later, bounding over the rise like salvation with a dust trail behind it. The driver slowed to avoid spooking the animals. But the moment the lions spotted the vehicle, their behavior changed. One by one they backed away, not in panic, but in frustration. They had been denied their prize. The last lioness, the injured one, locked eyes with Tamu one final time. Her lip curled, but then she too turned and disappeared into the brush. Tamu didn't move, not until every shadow was gone. Then, and only then, he lowered his head and looked back at Asha. Malik rushed down the slope, motioning the vet team to follow. She's alive, the calf's alive, he shouted. I don't know how, but she's alive because of him. The vet team began immediate triage, working swiftly to clean the wound, inject antibiotics, and stem the bleeding. A portable stretcher was prepared. All the while, Tamu stood nearby, not interfering, but not leaving either. Rachel, the lead, vet, looked up at the giraffe and shook her head in awe. I've worked here 10 years, she whispered, and I've never seen anything like this. Asha was lifted gently into the jeep's stretcher bed, her breathing shallow but steady. As the team began loading up, Tamu took a few steps closer, head low, nostrils flaring. Then he leaned down, not all the way, but just enough to brush his face gently beside Asha's ear. She stirred weakly. And then he stepped back. Rachel turned to Malik, her voice softer now. We're taking her in. She'll make it with rest. Malik nodded, then turned toward Tamu. You just rewrote everything we thought we knew, he murmured, and no one's going to believe a second of it. But Malik knew this was no myth. This wasn't fantasy or fable. This was real. And it was only the beginning. Asha's eyes fluttered open beneath the soft shade of the acacia trees surrounding the Savo Wildlife Recovery Outpost. Her side still throbbed, wrapped tightly in gauze. Every breath stung where the snare had torn, into muscle. But she was alive. And not just alive, she was safe. Voices drifted nearby, gentle and rhythmic as the rangers and vets moved around the clinic. But Asha wasn't listening to them. She was listening for a sound she hadn't heard in nearly 24 hours. The sound of long, slow footsteps. He wasn't there, not yet. Malik had noticed it first the day before. After the rescue team drove away with Asha secured in the back of the truck, Tamu didn't follow. He watched the jeep disappear, then turned and walked away, calmly, silently, into the tall grass. At first, Malik thought maybe that was it. Maybe the young giraffe had done something incredible and disappeared back into the wild, where no one could ask him to explain it. But 2 hours later, he was back. He didn't approach the clinic. Instead, he stood across the clearing, beyond the fencing, tall and motionless, watching. "He's waiting for her," Rachel had said, arms crossed as she stared out at him. "Just watching, like he's guarding the space where she's healing." So they let him stay. And he did. Day and night, never demanding anything, never crossing into the boundaries, just waiting. And every so often when Asha stirred, the softest rustle of grass outside the fence told them he hadn't gone far. It wasn't until the third morning that Malik made the decision to open the outer gate. "He's not here by accident," Malik said quietly to Rachel. "He didn't save her just to walk away." The staff agreed. They left the gate unlatched that morning, and sure enough, by noon, Tamu had stepped through. He didn't rush, he didn't panic. He simply walked, with purpose, to the shaded edge of Asha's pen and stopped. She saw him immediately, her trunk lifted slightly, still weak, but reaching toward him in recognition. Tamu leaned his head low, slowly extending his long neck, so that it hovered above her enclosure. They didn't touch, not quite, but the air between them felt electric, familiar, unspoken. Rachel approached quietly. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered. "That giraffe shouldn't even know what he's doing, and yet he does." It became a pattern. Every day Tamu visited the pen. Every day Asha got a little stronger. Her fever subsided. The swelling went down. She started to eat more, drink on her own, even tried to stand. When she finally managed to pull herself up on trembling legs, the first thing she did was walk toward the edge of her pen where Tamu stood. She leaned her forehead gently against the wood slats, and he mirrored the motion. That moment sent silence across the camp. Malik watched from the ranger station with arms folded, his heart clenching in a way he hadn't felt since his field days first began. "They know each other now," he murmured, "and not just from the clearing. Something deeper?" Rachel nodded beside him. "That giraffe didn't just save her life. He gave her something else, a reason to keep fighting." As the sun dipped low over the horizon, casting the outpost in warm golden light, Tamu lay, down for the first time just outside the enclosure, not to sleep, just to be there, resting, watching, waiting. And Asha curled up close to the inner edge of the fence, trunk draped across the soft grass, their breath falling into the same rhythm. The wild had always been unpredictable, but never like this. The morning Asha stood fully on her feet, strong and steady without trembling. The entire outpost paused to watch. Her healing had been slow but steady, weeks of careful feeding, clean dressings, quiet encouragement. The calf that once lay broken in the grass was now whole again. Her steps were firm, her eyes were bright, and Tamu, ever present just beyond the gate, had been part of every moment of her return. But that morning, something was different. Tamu didn't approach her pen. He remained near the edge of the tree line, half shrouded in the golden haze of sunrise. His long neck swayed gently, not from wind, but from hesitation. Malik was the first to notice the shift in behavior. "He's preparing to leave," he said. Murmured voices rose as Rachel frowned. Asha had already sensed it. She lingered near the gate, occasionally lifting her trunk in soft questioning, gestures she hadn't made in days. But Tamu didn't respond. He watched from a distance, unmoving. By midday, the tension hung so heavily in the air that even the workers spoke in hushed tones. Asha grew uneasy, pacing the pen, tapping the gate with her trunk, not in anger but confusion. She couldn't understand why the one who had always been there was suddenly staying away. Rachel knelt by Asha's fence, whispering gently. Sometimes letting go is part of healing too. But that was hard to explain to a calf who had learned safety in the shadow of a giraffe. That evening, Tamu didn't return. His silhouette disappeared just after sunset, swallowed by the tall grass and the hush of the wind. No one stopped him. Even Malik, who had grown quietly attached to the unlikely bond, said nothing. The next day, Asha barely ate. Her appetite had always mirrored his presence. Her body was healed, but her spirit seemed dimmed. She didn't pace. She didn't play. She stood quietly at the fence, waiting. Every rustle of leaves turned her head. Every distant call made her ears twitch. By the second morning, the team grew concerned. "She's regressing," Rachel said, checking her vitals. "It's not physical. It's emotional. She's grieving again." But Malik shook his head. "He's not gone. He's just farther away now." That evening, as the sky blazed orange over the ridge, Malik spotted a solitary figure standing tall against the horizon. Tamu, silent, unmoving, watching from afar. Then, without warning, a storm came. Adidau rolled in fast and wild, one of those sudden storms that hurl red dust skyward and send animals scattering. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked, wind tore across the plains. The team scrambled to secure the animals. In the chaos, no one noticed Asha's gate had come unlatched. The moment it shifted, she slipped through, driven by something stronger than fear. Malik turned just in time to see her vanish into the swirl of wind and dust. They chased her, but she was already gone. The storm slammed into the land like a living force. Rain fell in sheets. Dirt roads turned to rivers of rust. Thunder boomed endlessly, and the wind snapped tree limbs like matchsticks. Asha ran, not away from danger, but toward something sacred. Her legs, once too weak to hold her, now powered through mud and lightning. She wasn't running to escape. She was chasing something her heart remembered before her body could. The team followed, in the jeep crawling through the flood. Visibility dropped, every direction blurred. Malik scanned the plains. "She's heading for the ridge," he said tightly, "where he used to wait." Behind him, Rachel's voice cracked. "If she collapses, if her injury tears—" "She won't," Malik said, his grip tightening on the wheel. "She's not running to survive. She's running to find him." Out on the plain, Asha pressed forward, her ears flattened. Her trunk swept the soaked ground, searching. The scents were faint, washed away by rain, but she followed something deeper, an instinct formed in silent trust. Then, in the haze, a shape moved. She froze. Through the storm, she saw him, tall as a tree, still as a statue. Tamu. He hadn't left. He had returned to the place where he used to watch, and Asha had found him. She let out a low cry, not loud, not desperate, just a sound of knowing. Tamu stepped forward slowly, carefully, his movements gentle in the slick mud. He approached her like he had the first time, with reverence. Asha stepped closer and rested her head against his chest. Tamu curled his neck over her back. They stood that way in the heart of the storm, unmoving, as if the world itself had stopped. From the ridge above, the ranger spotted them. Malik exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "We found them," he said softly. No one rushed in, no one dared interrupt. The storm faded into silence around them. All that remained was a calf and a giraffe, alone in the rain, bound by something stronger than explanation. Eventually, Asha turned back, and this time, Tamu followed. Together, they walked toward the ridge, their footprints merging in the wet earth. The team met them halfway, blankets in hand, awe in their eyes. No one spoke much. What was there to say? The wild had just revealed something deeper than words. Back at the outpost, Asha was examined. No injuries, vitals strong. Her body had healed, but more importantly, her spirit had changed. She no longer waited at the gates. She no longer needed reassurance, because he was there, always nearby. The team agreed to let Tamu roam the outer perimeter. He never entered the buildings. He never caused harm. But each morning, as the mist lifted, he stood at the fence. And each morning, Asha was there to greet him. Word of their bond spread beyond Savo. Photos captured their quiet moments. Asha brushing her trunk along his leg, Tamu lowering branches for her to reach. It wasn't just heartwarming, it was transformative. Conservationists called them a symbol of interspecies empathy. Schools studied them. Filmmakers reached out. But to Malik and Rachel and the others, they were simply a reminder of what the world could be when survival is shaped by connection, not fear. Eventually, the day came for Asha's release. Her herd had returned, plans were made. But things had changed. Asha no longer trembled. She didn't follow. She led. On the morning of her release, the team stood silently. She was guided to the open field near the riverbed, where the matriarchs had gathered. The herd turned at her scent. A pause, then a low rumble from the elder cow. The group shifted, making space. Asha didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, pausing just once. Tamu was there, at the edge of the trees. Their eyes met. She didn't cry. She didn't waver. She simply nodded. And Tamu, as if understanding, nodded back. She turned and walked into the herd. Tamu stood a moment longer. Then he turned, casting one last glance at the humans who had watched them grow, and walked away. His silhouette carved the light like a brushstroke across gold. He never returned to the fence. He didn't need to. His purpose had been fulfilled. New animals arrived over time, injured, frightened, in need. Asha's name became legend. And sometimes, when the fog rolled in from the east and the morning light slanted just right, a giraffe's silhouette could be seen on the ridge, still watching. Not because he had to, but because real love doesn't vanish when the danger passes. It waits quietly, just beyond the trees, in case it's ever needed again.